You know, when you look at the dashboard of your car, there's this underlying contract between you and the machine.
Right, a level of trust.
Exactly. You expect the gauges to tell you the absolute objective truth, right? Like if the speedometer says you're doing 65, you're doing 65. If the fuel gauge says full, you have gas.
Yeah, you don't really question it.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
We rely on those metrics to feel secure, to feel in control of the journey. But imagine looking down, seeing the speedometer holding steady, but feeling the steering wheel just violently shaking in your hands.
Oh, man. That's a terrifying feeling.
It really is. And hearing the engine physically knocking under the hood, that disconnect between what the shiny gauges tell us and the gritty reality of the mechanics underneath, well, that is exactly what we are unpacking today. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. We're looking at a pretty bizarre phenomenon across the board today, the illusion of stability.
Yeah, the illusion of stability. Today, we are pulling apart a whole stack of curated news sources. We've got stuff from the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, Reuters, NPR, and our mission is to uncover how that illusion actually works.
Because it's everywhere right now.
It really is. We are looking at a U.S. economy that technically, quote-unquote, lost jobs, yet somehow saw its unemployment rate drop. We're looking at Iran attempting to set up what is basically a toll booth in the middle of an international waterway.
Which is wild.
So wild. And we're looking at politicians jumping out of planes only to realize, midair, that they just don't have parachutes. Now, real quick, as we get into this, I need to point out to you, the listener, that we are touching on some highly charged political and global realities today.
Right. Very sensitive stuff.
Extremely. So, our goal today isn't to weigh in on who is right or who is wrong. We are absolutely not taking any sides, left wing or right wing. We are just here to act as your guides, impartially reporting on the viewpoints and the facts contained in these sources, just to help you understand the landscape.
Stripping away the spin and just looking at how the engine is actually running.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. And I think the best place to start is with the gauge that almost everyone relies on to judge the health of the United States, right? The labor market.
Oh, yeah. The classic economic dashboard.
Right. So looking at the Wall Street Journal's coverage of the July jobs report, if you casually glanced at the headlines, you saw what looked like a total victory. The unemployment rate actually fell from 4.2% to 4.1%.
Well, which, in a vacuum usually means you pop the champagne.
Right. A dropping unemployment rate is like the ultimate sign of a thriving country. Politicians love it. But the actual math underneath that headline is, well, it's flashing red.
Very red.
Yeah. Wall Street was expecting the economy to add about 83,000 jobs in July. Instead, the U.S. economy actually lost 23,000 jobs. I mean, that is a massive swing in the wrong direction.
It's a severe contraction. And the foundation underneath it is even weaker when you look at the revision.
Oh, right to revision.
Yeah, because the Labor Department quietly revised the numbers for May and June downward by a combined 103,000 jobs. So, we aren't just looking at a bad July. We're looking at a labor market that has been steadily shrinking for basically a quarter of the year.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's unpack the mechanics here because it sounds, frankly, impossible. If the economy lost 23,000 jobs in 1 month, and they erased over 100,000 jobs from the previous months, how on earth does the official unemployment rate drop to 4.1%?
It comes down to the specific formula the government uses.
Okay.
The unemployment rate, it doesn't measure everyone without a job. It only measures people who do not have a job and are actively looking for one.
Ah, right. So it's a measurement of participation, not just raw employment.
Precisely. The rate dipped because a massive wave of Americans simply stopped looking for work.
Wow.
Yeah, they exited the labor force entirely. I mean, maybe they got discouraged after sending out hundreds of resumes, or maybe they decided to retire early, or, maybe their skills just no longer match the available roles.
Right. The reason doesn't actually matter to the formula.
Exactly. Regardless of the reason, the moment they stop actively searching, the government just erases them from the unemployed category. The pool of total workers shrinks, which mathematically pushes the percentage down. It makes the headline look great, even as the actual workforce is hollowing out.
It's like celebrating that you lost 10 pounds, but only because you cut off your own arm.
That's entirely accurate.
I mean, it's technically true, but structurally, it is a complete disaster.
It really is. And this dynamic creates an absolute nightmare for the Federal Reserve because they are the ones actually trying to steer the economy, right? And they rely on these exact gauges to set interest rates.
Right, the dual mandate.
Yeah, they have a dual mandate from Congress.
Huh?
Keep prices stable by fighting inflation and maximize employment.
Which is a really tough tightrope to walk because the tools to fix one usually end up hurting the other. Like, if they raise interest rates to kill inflation, they cool the economy down, which usually leads to companies laying people off.
And that is the exact trap they're in right now. Inflation remains stubbornly elevated, so instinct says, keep rates high or even raise them again.
Right.
But underneath that fake 4.1% unemployment rate is a labor pool that is already shrinking. We actually have Fed Governor Lisa Cook stating, and I'll quote her here, "I consider the risks to the inflation side of the dual mandate higher than the risks to the employment side at this point."
Wow. So she is signaling a clear willingness to prioritize inflation.
Exactly. But the collateral damage of that prioritization falls directly on the everyday worker. Because the data shows that while massive sweeping layoffs are still relatively muted, hiring has just completely hit a wall.
It's totally stalled.
Yeah, a growing share of unemployed workers are now stuck searching for jobs for more than 6 months.
And 6 months of unemployment? Oh, mate, that doesn't just hurt a bank account. It
Right.
causes your skills to atrophy. It crushes consumer spending, which, if I remember correctly, makes up like 70% of the U.S. economy.
Yep, roughly 70%. And when people stop spending, businesses stop hiring, and the whole cycle just accelerates.
Right. The shiny dashboard says everything is fine, but the engine is really struggling to turn over.
Precisely.
That hidden domestic stress is obviously causing immense uncertainty here at home. But when we look overseas, international markets are dealing with an entirely different kind of uncertainty. And this one comes with a literal price tag.
Yeah, a very steep one.
Right. So moving over to a report from NPR, the illusion of secure global trade is being heavily tested in the Middle East right now, specifically in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most critical geopolitical choke points on the entire planet. I mean, roughly 20% of the world's total global oil consumption passes through that narrow waterway.
20%. That is massive.
It is the jugular vein of the global energy market.
And according to this NPR source, Iran's parliament is currently considering a bill that would fundamentally alter how that vein operates.
Right.
They are proposing a ban on commercial ships tied to the U.S., Israel, and basically any nation they deem a, quote, hostile country from using the strait unless Tehran is financially compensated for past war damages.
It's incredibly aggressive.
And the numbers are wild. They are outlining a toll of up to 7% of a cargo's value and penalties of up to 20% if ships ignore the conditions.
Which is financially staggering. I mean, think about it. If you are moving a supertanker holding over $100 million worth of crude oil, a 7% toll fundamentally destroys the profit margin of the entire voyage.
But wait, let's look at this mechanistically. Can a country just set up a toll booth in an international waterway?
Right.
I mean, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea guarantees transit passage through straits used for international navigation.
That's right.
So this sounds less like legal geopolitics and more like a pirate movie.
Well, what's fascinating here is the mechanics of the threat itself. Under international law, U.S. officials and allies insist Iran has zero legal authority to do this. None. It is legally classified as an international strait.
Okay, so it's illegal.
But the law only matters if it can be enforced. And what is brilliant and honestly terrifying about this move by Iran is that they don't actually have to pass the bill. They don't have to physically collect a single toll to inflict massive damage on the global economy.
Because the threat itself becomes a tax.
Exactly. The editor's note from the source points this out perfectly. Global markets price in risk instantaneously. Shipping companies rely on maritime insurance. So when a major player like Iran even drafts legislation threatening a 20% penalty, combined with the reality of ongoing violence in the region.
Like the Iran-backed Houthi forces launching drone attacks into Saudi Arabia recently.
Right.
That injured 11 people.
Right, exactly. When you combine those things, insurance premiums for vessels entering the Gulf just absolutely skyrocket.
Ah, I see. So even if Iran never collects a dime at this imaginary toll booth, the shipping company pays double for insurance. They pass that extra cost onto the energy buyer, who passes it onto the refinery, who passes it directly onto you at the gas pump.
Yes, exactly. The uncertainty itself acts as a massive global tax.
Wow. It just proves that stability in that region was always heavily dependent on the assumption of safe passage.
It was an illusion.
Yeah. And when that assumption breaks down, if a major transit lane is being threatened, neighbors are going to get nervous, right? They don't just sit around waiting for the U.S. Navy to fix it. They start doing their own geopolitical math and looking for new insurance policies.
Which brings us to a really massive under-the-radar shift.
Yes, and this is according to a report from Reuters. When the primary safety net starts looking frayed, you scramble for a plan B. And we are seeing Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan do exactly that. They've just signed a formalized mutual defense pact in Mecca, declaring that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is a seismic rewiring of Middle Eastern security architecture. For decades, the baseline of stability for Gulf nations, especially Saudi Arabia, was the U.S. security umbrella.
Right.
The unwritten rule was that the U.S. would protect the free flow of oil and defend its regional partners.
But, as we just talked about, the U.S. hasn't been able to completely stop those Houthi drone attacks or fully deter Iran's proxies from harassing the shipping lanes. So Saudi Arabia is looking at the dashboard, seeing the warning lights, and they're assembling a brand new engine.
Yeah, they are.
And look at the specific components of this new engine. This looks like they're assembling a brand new geopolitical Avengers team.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. You've got Turkey bringing NATO's second largest military. You have Pakistan bringing a deeply entrenched military and a nuclear arsenal. And you have Saudi Arabia bringing immense oil wealth and religious influence.
It is a heavyweight alliance, and historically, Saudi Arabia and Turkey have often been rivals for influence in the Sunni Muslim world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So for them to align like this and to sign a mutual defense pact in a location as deeply symbolic as Mecca, that speaks volumes about how seriously they view the current threat level.
Okay, so how does this connect back to Iran?
Well, the official language of the pact emphasizes that it is purely defensive, not aimed at any specific country.
Of course, that's what they always say.
Right. But you have to read between the lines. This is a Sunni majority alliance forming a united front while facing escalating, coordinated attacks from Iranian-backed Shiite proxy groups across the region.
So it's a geopolitical plan B.
Exactly. It doesn't formally replace or sever ties with U.S. security arrangements, but the subtext is impossible to ignore. It broadcasts a very clear message that regional powers are no longer convinced the old Western guarantees are enough to keep them safe.
Right. They're taking their defense into their own hands because the math of relying solely on Washington just no longer adds up.
And, that instinct, that scramble to pivot to a narrower, more localized plan B when the grand strategy hits a wall, it's a universal mechanism. We see it in geopolitics, and interestingly enough, we are seeing it right now back in Washington, D.C. with domestic U.S. policy.
Okay, let's shift gears to the executive branch, looking at this Associated Press report. The current administration under President Trump is taking another run at limiting birthright citizenship and curbing what is legally termed birth tourism.
Yeah, and the context here is super vital to understanding the strategy.
Right, and again, just to remind you, the listener, we are looking at this purely mechanistically, just reporting on the legal maneuvers without taking any political side.
Exactly. So the administration previously attempted a very broad, sweeping executive order to reinterpret birthright citizenship. That was Plan A. But the Supreme Court blocked it, citing the 14th Amendment.
So Plan A hit the constitutional brick wall, and instead of giving up, they're pulling out Plan B. And this Plan B involves a much narrower, highly specific legal targeting. Trump signed new executive orders that don't try to ban birthright citizenship outright, but instead they try to carve out exceptions.
Really specific exceptions.
Yeah. The orders specifically target children born to foreign embassy staff, those classified legally as, quote, alien enemies, and cases where parents obtained citizenship through fraud.
Let's break down why they chose those specific categories, because it's all about the constitutional friction. The 14th Amendment states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens.
Okay.
The legal friction is entirely around that one phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Right, because foreign diplomats and embassy staff, they have diplomatic immunity, which means they aren't technically subject to standard U.S. legal jurisdiction in the same way.
Exactly. The administration is trying to exploit that specific loophole.
And the alien enemies category is even more complex, right?
Oh, it's wild. That stems from the Alien Enemies Act of 1798.
1798.
Yeah. It allows the president to deport citizens of a hostile nation during a declared war. So using it in modern non-wartime immigration policy is an immense legal stretch. But the strategy is clear. By shrinking the target from everyone down to these hyper-specific edge cases, they're trying to find a sympathetic judge who might agree that these narrow carve-outs don't violate the broader amendment.
And Trump actually laid out the strategy plainly. He said, and I'll quote him directly here, I thought we were going to win it at the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we had a bad decision. We're ending it a different way.
Right, they're just trying a new angle.
They also signed an order to tighten visa restrictions to stop birth tourism, which is when people travel to the U.S. on a tourist visa, primarily to give birth on U.S. soil. But wait, doesn't existing law already allow consular officers to deny visas if they suspect that is a primary intent of the trip?
It does, which means that specific visa order is more about political messaging and directing agencies to aggressively enforce existing rules rather than actually writing new law.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the listener? I mean, is this legal whack-a-mole actually a viable strategy or just a political statement?
Well, immigration advocates and groups like the ACLU, they argue the constitutional language is absolute. They expect this Plan B to fail, just like the first attempt. But the administration argues the Constitution leaves room for narrower restrictions. It really encourages you to think critically about how the executive branch constantly tests the boundaries of the judicial branch.
It's a strategy of testing the perimeter to see where the fence is weak. When a sledgehammer doesn't work, you bring out a scalpel. You find a workaround.
You do. But there are limits to workarounds. You can draft all the legal theories you want, but sometimes you are dealing with raw, undeniable numbers. And when that math runs out, the illusion of political stability shatters instantly.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle today. And this is looking at two separate but incredibly parallel political crises playing out right now in Washington. Because in politics, your safety net is made entirely of other people's loyalty.
Yes, it is.
And right now, we're watching two men realize that their net has completely vanished.
Yeah, let's look at the confirmation battle for Todd Blanche first. He's President Trump's nominee for Attorney General. Now, in the Senate, a confirmation vote requires a simple majority. It is pure, brutal arithmetic.
And according to the Washington Post, the arithmetic for Blanche is completely collapsing. It is hanging by a thread. GOP Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine have officially stated they are voting no.
And Murkowski didn't mince words either.
Not at all. I have her quote here. She said, "The country needs an attorney general who will check the worst impulses of this administration."
Ouch. And that public defection, it fundamentally changes the mechanics of the nomination. Because Senator Mitch McConnell is currently absent while recovering from a fall, the Republican majority is temporarily smaller. Blanche can basically only afford to lose 2 Republican votes.
And he has already lost Murkowski and Collins. Plus, Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana hasn't officially committed either way, but he has voiced deep concerns. If Cassidy or any other single Republican senator defects, Blanche's nomination is mathematically dead.
Dead in the water.
There is no executive order or Plan B that can manufacture a missing Senate vote.
The editor's note in our source actually put it perfectly. They said, confirmation votes are a lot like parachutes. You really don't want to discover you're missing one after you've already jumped.
Oh, it's so true.
The administration jumped, but the math simply isn't there to catch them.
And that exact same free fall is happening right now in the House of Representatives, but for a totally different reason. This is from a report in The Hill regarding Ohio Representative Max Miller. His political future is also collapsing, but due to serious domestic abuse allegations made by his ex-wife. Now again, we must state clearly for the record that Representative Miller vehemently denies and disputes all of these allegations.
Right, that has to be stated. But the mechanics of his political survival, they actually have nothing to do with a trial and everything to do with a Monday ballot deadline.
Exactly. Multiple powerful GOP senators, I mean, we're talking Husted, Sheehy, Britt, Marshall, Capito, they have all publicly demanded he step down. And they were demanding it immediately before the state's Monday deadline to lock in the ballot.
What is fascinating here is the ruthless pragmatism of the party machinery.
Yes.
They aren't waiting for legal proceedings. They are looking at a district in Ohio that Trump won comfortably. It is a safe Republican seat. But the party leadership has run the numbers and decided that Miller's presence on the ticket, surrounded by this scandal, turns a safe seat into a vulnerable one.
They are terrified of a safe Republican seat flipping to a Democrat just because they tried to protect an incumbent. So for Todd Blanche, he just doesn't have the numbers to get through the door. And for Max Miller, his party is looking at the polling numbers and deciding they need to throw him out the door just to save the furniture.
It's all just math. In both instances, the traditional expectation of partisan loyalty violently collided with pragmatic numerical reality.
Right.
When the math stops working in your favor, loyalty evaporates. The illusion of political safety is just that, an illusion.
Wow. And, that brings everything full circle for you today. We started by talking about reading the dashboard. And every single story we pulled apart today showed how those shiny gauges hide the grinding gears underneath.
We saw a dropping unemployment rate that was actually masking a workforce that is shrinking and giving up.
We saw how international maritime law can't stop the sheer threat of an Iranian toll booth from acting as a massive tax on the global energy supply. We watched historic rivals in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, form a defensive pact because the old U.S. safety net is no longer viewed as reliable.
We examined an administration pivoting to highly specific legal loopholes to restrict birthright citizenship, after the courts rejected their initial broad strokes plan.
And we saw how quickly political safety nets vanish when the hard math of a Senate vote or a ballot deadline turns against you. Across the board, what looks like stability on the surface is actually just a frantic, real-time scramble for a plan B.
Which leaves you with an important lens for the rest of your week. We've spent this deep dive looking at what happens when the official plan fails and people scramble for a plan B. But as you navigate the news this week, as you watch the markets, the geopolitics, and the political maneuvers unfold, ask yourself this. What happens when plan B fails, too?
Oh, that's a chilling thought.
Where do markets or nations or politicians go when there's no safety net left to catch them?
When the dashboard finally goes completely dark, how do you steer? It's a massive question. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, keep looking under the hood, and we'll catch you next time.